What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of Monster Hunter Vendetta. Now, before I jump into the review, let's go over what is this book about. Owen Zastava Pitt, accountant turned professional monster hunter, managed to stop the nefarious Old One's invasion plans last year, but as a result made an enemy out of one of the most powerful beings in the universe. Now, an evil death cult known as the Church of the Temporary Mortal Condition wants to capture Owen in order to gain the favor of the Great Old Ones. The condition is led by a fanatical necromancer known as the Shadow Man. The government wants to capture the Shadow Man and has assigned the enigmatic Agent Franks to be Owen's full-time bodyguard, which is a polite way of saying that Owen is monster bait. With supernatural assassins targeting his family, a spy in their midst, and horrific beasties lurking around every corner, Owen and the staff of Monster Hunter International don't need to go monster hunting, because this time the monsters are hunting them. Fortunately, this bait is armed and very dangerous. Alright guys, the way that I normally structure my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things I didn't enjoy so much, and these are preferential things like characters, writing style, those types of things. And then I go over the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break that down into 5 categories. But before we do that, let's jump right in and let's go over the good. What were some things that I enjoyed about this book? Now, first and foremost, I listened to this on audio for the most part. I did read some of it physically, but I did listen to most of it over the audiobook. So the things I liked about it, I really enjoyed the narrator for the audiobook. He did an excellent job. I believe it's the same narrator for book 1, and I also believe it's the same narrator throughout the entire series. He did a fantastic job. On top of that, the character Z, or Owen, our main protagonist, I'm really enjoying his character. I see a lot of similarities with he and I, even with our builds.
That guy in a little coat. That guy in a little coat.
Don't.
But yeah, I'm really enjoying the character of Owen. He doesn't take himself too seriously, but he is encountering serious circumstances. But I've really learned to love his character in particular. I also really like Earl Harbinger. His character is really intriguing. He's got a lot of mystery in his background, but there's some really cool things going on with Earl that I don't want to get into. Now, keep in mind that this is book 2 of the series, so there are going to be some light spoilers here. I'm going to try to stay as spoiler-free as possible, but there are going to be some light spoilers here. Like, obviously, our protagonist survived the first book. What did I enjoy about this book? Well, I'm going to compare it a lot to book 1. This book was far more fast-paced. This book was tightened up quite a bit more. I think that Larry Correa did a good job of telling his audience a more in-depth and even more vast story than in book 1, but he did it in pretty much the same page count. So he really trimmed the fat in this one, I think. On top of that, we're introduced to some of Owen's family. We're introduced to some of their backstory. We understand some of the motivations behind these characters. Really enjoyed that. Also, the setting. I absolutely loved that we didn't stay in one area. However, I also liked that there were times where we were centralized in Alabama. Now, for those of you that haven't read book 1, MHI headquarters is located near Montgomery, Alabama. Which to me, that's pretty cool because, you know, I'm just a few hours away from there. So that it's really cool for me to see where they're located. And then I also can feel some of the setting when he's talking about the humid summers and those types of things. I know that Larry has at least visited here during that time, if not live here. I don't really know Larry's background, but I do know at the least he has visited Alabama during its summers because he describes it to a T. On top of that, I really enjoyed learning more about, let's just say, our helicopter pilot and his family. Again, if you haven't read book 1, then you probably have no idea who or what I'm talking about, but if you have, then you obviously do. We learn more about their backstory. But one of the coolest things to me is the battle scenes that are in here, because they're obviously grander in scale. But one of the coolest things was when it was talking about near the sort of like the big battle at the end, we hear that helicopters are coming to essentially rescue or at least back up Owen in his efforts to defeat the big bad guy. And the PA speakers in all of the helicopters are synced up. And Larry writes that you can hear in the background, white zombies, more human than human. And so what I did is I actually turned on that song and read that chapter, and it fit so perfectly. It was awesome. If you guys have looked at my review on Instagram, I think I actually have that song bedded underneath my actual written review. But yeah, it was perfect. It was like hearing Fortunate Son come on during Forrest Gump when they're flying into Vietnam. It had a similar feel there. So you could definitely see how when that song is playing and this big battle is about to take place, how the people who are manning the mounted turrets on these helicopters are about to just mow down everything in sight. So that to me was one of the highlights. It might seem silly, but I'm a big music guy, and so it just fit so perfectly. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about this book. I'll say this: if you liked book one, you're really going to like book two. If you loved book one, I think this was a step up in almost every way for Larry Correa. So if you loved book one, you're really going to enjoy book two. I enjoyed this quite a bit more than I did book one. I think his writing was elevated. I think the fact that he was able to trim that fat was fantastic. I thought we got more in depth with our characters without having to go longer in the tooth. The battles were cooler. The bad guy was a little bit cooler. I mean, to me, this was just a step up in every way. So as far as the good goes, most of it, if you liked book one, you're going to like most of book two. I don't think there's a whole lot in here for you to dislike if you enjoyed book one. So I do highly recommend this if you like book one. But this leads me into the bad. What were some things about the book that I didn't like? There were some corny things in here. Now, they're supposed to be. I'm being kind of nitpicky here. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of made me go, ugh. It just kind of made me roll my eyes a few times. But like I said, it wasn't necessarily bad. It's just it was a little cheesy. Agent Franks, if you guys have read this book, kind of the reveal of Agent Franks. At first, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, oh, that is super lame. No, yeah, there's a few times in here where the cheese factor is pretty high. I again, I made comparisons with book one to the Dresden Files, and I'm definitely going to make similar comparisons here. These books don't take themselves too seriously. There's some heavy subject matter in here, but again, it's all kind of lighthearted. I think this is how I would write this story to a degree. There's obviously some things that I would omit, but the fact that he's able to bring levity to these things, to bring levity to, characters being killed off, he does a very good job of doing that, but there is quite a bit of cheese factor in here. So just know that going into it. I don't really care so much about the relationship aspect between Owen and another character. Again, I'm just trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible. I think maybe that's fleshed out a little too much. I think for those people that are here for a Monster Hunter book, they're not really here for the romance. That's my opinion. I think the romance in this book might be too much of a focal point at times. It's not bad. I just don't really care that much about it. That's me personally. So we went over the good and the bad. This leads me to the ugly. What could be some sin that is steeped into this book that might hold a Christian back? I'm going to give you an overall view to start with, and then I'm going to go in depth with my 5 categories. My overall view is, if you haven't read book one, or if you haven't seen my review of book one, I highly recommend you go check that out, because it's really kind of just more of the same. There are things in here that I definitely think could hold a Christian back from picking this up. But if you read book one and enjoyed it, I don't think you're going to have much to worry about in book two. But this leads me to my 5 categories. And so we're going to start with violence and brutality. Now, violence and brutality, I gave a 7. This book is pretty violent. There's a lot of big battle scenes. I mean, you're dealing with monsters that are in our world. So sometimes defenseless people are facing off against supernatural monsters. So you kind of know what to expect. So I'm giving it a 7 overall, but if I were doing it in context of the genre and the book, it would be much lower. But overall, I would give it a 7 because there's some pretty gory bits in here. We're talking about zombies quite a bit. I mean, we're dealing with a necromancer. So you're talking about zombies. So there are a lot of casualties of kind of everyday civilians. So just know that going into it. He does go into a little bit of description. I don't think it's gratuitous, but just know that going into it. I mean, you're dealing with these monster hunters, you're dealing with vampires, werewolves, zombies, the undead, just in general, and you're dealing with people with guns that are coming to wipe out these monsters. So that's what you're dealing with. So that's why the violence and brutality is high, because that's a big part of the book. So this leads me into sexually explicit content. Now, I gave this a 3. It could probably be a 4, but I'm going to give it about a 3 just because, again, with the subject matter within this book, it probably could be a lot higher than it actually is. There are some discussions of some things that are more explicit in nature. Things like when you're dealing with vampires that are trying to convince, and I use that word intentionally, but they're trying to convince people to let them in, or they're trying to brainwash them in such a way that they can get them, kind of control them. Just seductive type things. I don't think there's anything that's like overtly sexually explicit in this book. There's some fade to black things. I'll just say it wasn't to the point to where it made me uncomfortable. So that's why I gave it a 3. Now this leads me into language. Language, I'm going to give an 8. Now, the reason why I'm giving it an 8 is because for the most part, there's very little language in here whatsoever. And again, like I said with book 1, it's very similar in nature, but there are times where the language can get pretty intense. There are times when our character gets really riled up, where people that he cares about are endangered, and obviously that will evoke a certain type of response from somebody that has a more worldly worldview. So keep that in mind. The language can and does get pretty intense at times. They use some pretty heavy hitters in this book at times. Again, if that's something that you want to steer away from, I completely understand. This may not be the book or the series for you, but overall, I would say it does get intense, but for the most part, it's pretty tame. But just know that going into it, because I don't want it to surprise you. This leads me to gratuitous inclusions. This I gave a 0. I can't think of anything in here that was inclusive for the sake of being inclusive. If any of you know anything about Larry Correa, he is a staunch opponent of gratuitous inclusions. So obviously I'm not going to see that, or we aren't going to see that in his books. So I think the characters that were there are there intentionally. I think the diversity of our cast is intentional as well. You have some male, some female, you have some from different ethnic backgrounds, some from different religious backgrounds, and it's kind of all just mishmashed together into this one group that we're following. And he does an excellent job of helping the reader differentiate between each of those characters. I don't think there's anything gratuitous in the inclusions here. And then this leads me to the final category, which is dark themes. I gave this a 5. The reason why I gave it a 5 is somewhere in the middle. You know, it does talk about some darker things like murder, things like espionage. It deals with some psychological type things. Sometimes it deals with spiritual things in nature. But the reason why I gave it a 5 is because there are times where the dark themes can come across as a bit heavier handed than other times. But really, I didn't see a whole lot that would hold me back from continuing with the book. So that's why I put it at a 5, because sometimes there's some heavy topics, but most of the time it's fine. And so this leads me to the final question, which is, would I recommend this to a Christian? And the answer is, it depends. The answer is actually, I absolutely would if you liked book 1. So if you liked book 1, I think you're really going to like book 2. If you didn't like book 1 or you had to put it down, I don't recommend you picking up book 2, because it's just more of the same. It's tightened up a little bit with a better story. Sometimes there's things that are more intense than there were in book 1. Sometimes there are things that are less intense than were in book 1. And so there's some trade-offs there, but overall, I would say if you like book 1, you're going to like book 2. But for the everyday average Joe. If you are averse to heavy language at times, I would say don't read this. If you are averse to some heavy violence or descriptive gory parts, I would say don't read this. This is coming from me. I would say I think men are going to like this book a lot more than women probably would. This is sort of like an action movie mixed with Silver Bullet. That's kind of like a decent way to describe this book. I enjoy it. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. It's been nice that I don't have to really spend a lot of brain power focused on this book. He's just telling you a story without going super deep into all these descriptors, or he's just telling a good, fun, action-packed monster story. So overall, would I recommend it to a Christian? I would, if they liked book one. And so if you like book one, if you like some of the old classic horror movies, if you like fast-paced action, you'll probably like this. But if that doesn't sound good to you and it sounds like, oh, that's like walking into Blockbuster and finding the movie with the shiny case, those are the ones I stayed away from. You're probably not going to like this. To the effect of, the cover on this is actually that kind of old school, shiny VHS cover, which I think is actually pretty funny and pretty cool and very accurate, because that's kind of what you're getting here. But again, this isn't going to be some sort of groundbreaking series for you. This is going to be one of those fun palate cleanser reads. So I would recommend it, but it depends on the reader and on the individual. So overall, I really liked it. I'm going to read book 3. I fully intend on picking up book 3 pretty soon. I'll probably listen to it on audio. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this series so far. It's actually gotten me pretty excited to start his fantasy series, which I know he just completed. And I also know that in this series, he has like a little spin-off series. So I'm looking forward to reading those books as well. My friend Jonathan Cohn, which make sure you go check out his channel. He does an excellent job with his reviews. He reviews every book that he reads. But yeah, if this sounds interesting to you guys, make sure you pick it up. I plan on moving forward with the series and seeing how it goes. Guys, if you've read this series, let me know down in the comments below if you've liked it, or if you've gotten up to this point, let me know what you think about it. Let me know kind of what you think I may think about the coming books. I look forward to talking to you down in the comments section. I always love talking to you guys. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the next one.